Hi, Evil Squid Comics podcast, episode 7, volume 3. Tonight we have Kyle Strahm with us.
Yay!
Hey. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I've been working in my studio today. It's raining.
Is that what's behind you?
I like
Is that what?
Is that what's behind you?
Yeah, this is my office behind me.
I like
I
it.
got some posters I have not hung up yet. I will someday. I'm surrounded by my books and all of my accumulation of toys.
Those IKEA Kallax or whatever shelves?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. I got the same thing for my board games.
They're nice. I like them.
They are.
You guys have an IKEA in Kansas City, don't you?
They do.
Yeah.
It's
We
like
do.
Mary something. Yeah.
Lucky.
Well,
I just buy the cheap cubies at like Target or whatever.
That's what I bought.
I didn't like go to IKEA like Scott did and make like a road trip out of
They're
it.
not that cheap anymore, though. Really,
They're really not.
nothing
what are
is.
you guys up to?
Not too much. Just, same old, same old.
Just reading comics.
Reading lots of comics, quarantining, that good stuff.
Work from home.
Oh yeah, I'm working from home, so that's good.
Cool.
So tell us. So you're working on a new project.
I am. I'm working on a couple of new projects.
Okay. Well, the one you keep posting the art from.
Is that Twig? Or
Yeah, that's Twig. So the little blue fuzzy guy and his little yellow slug friend, Splat. Those are the main characters of the comic. You know what? I've done no conventions. I don't talk to anybody. So this is the first time I've really explained what Twig is to anybody.
Hey.
But yeah, so Scotty Young is writing it, and we share a studio. His studio is right next to mine. And I am doing the art with Jan Below, I believe his name's pronounced. And he's doing a great job with the color. But yeah, it'll be 5 issues, we think, and it should be out from Image but before the end of the year.
Nice.
And it's sort of it's like a fantasy, like a kind of a 80s cartoon movie vibe, like a Don Bluth, like those weird 80s kids cartoons that are kind of dark sometimes.
Right.
It's one of those.
him?
So it's 5 issues then? Is it planned? I mean, can you do more if it does well, or is it just a complete contained 5 issues?
Well, if it does well, we might do more, but we would do it as a second mini series.
Okay.
But yeah, it's I'm having a lot of fun drawing it because it's all created out of whole cloth. There are no rules to the world that we're building except what we make up, which is kind of nice because while I'm drawing, instead of going, that's not right, I'll be like, yeah, that's right.
No reference, right?
Yeah, that's right. We said it's right. And it takes place in a magical world, so we can pretty much do anything we want to. It's lots of fun. And that's having fun is sort of the whole idea, because there are a lot of comics that aren't much fun and don't mean to be, but this one is.
The colorist, he's worked with Scotty a lot. Is that right?
Oh yeah, he's been working with Scotty for years, since Oz at least. They did that Marvel Oz book together, and he colored all of I Hate Fairyland, and he colored all of Middle West, and he colored Bully Wars, the book Scotty did with Aaron Conley, and I think he does most of Scotty's Marvel covers too. But he is a fantastic colorist.
Is he European?
He is Canadian.
Canadian, okay. Probably French Canadian, John.
There you go. I was going to say French, but
Francois Below, the last name.
Yeah, I was gonna say French, but that works. French Canadian. So
That makes sense.
so what's the other?
So the other
Project.
project.
Let's say an Octane or whatever that book is, right?
Oh, really?
No.
That is not that one. So
Damn it.
the other project isn't announced yet, but I'm doing it with Jake Smith. Have you guys met Jake Smith?
Oh yeah, he came
Yep.
to the con the last time we had a con.
Yeah, so Jake just moved to Kansas City right before the pandemic. I feel bad for him because he was like, I'm coming to Kansas City. I'm going to hang out with everybody. And then everything shut down, and he's been locked in his house. But Jake has done a lot of books that he's put out on his own. He did one called This Offbeat Town a few years ago. But most recently, he's done one called Blood Force Trauma that he wrote and drew. And it just hit a Kickstarter for the 3rd issue. I think
just
he's
backed
drawn good.
Actually, I went all in. I got a page of art out of it. I went to the.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I
So
got
on the second Kickstarter, I got the VHS tape
Oh, that's cool.
reward.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, that's one of the rewards.
Yeah, I haven't dug out a VCR yet, so I haven't watched it. But I have a cool VHS.
Maybe that's what he was counting on, and
Right.
there's nothing on it.
It's blank. It's like a cleaner.
Mhm.
It's the head cleaner or whatever VC tape. Yeah, that.
But yeah, the Kickstarter was a success. So he's done 3 issues of that via Kickstarter now. I'm
That's
in one
like
of them.
an inside baseball question.
Oh no, I know where you're going.
You can. I don't know if I'll be able to answer it.
You probably can't answer it, and even if you know the answer, you probably can't say what happened with the publisher he had for that book. It kind of just fell apart.
Yeah, I think that's a question for him.
Okay, I assume you couldn't say anything.
Would have figured, but
It doesn't hurt to ask.
no.
Um,
I was excited about that. I'm sure he was too. 'Cause
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame that happened. But I think that the book is strong enough that it's going to end up collected somewhere. But yeah, that's not just by Jake. It's also by his friend Harem, who helped write it. But where was I? I don't even know.
You're doing a project.
Your
with
other
him.
project that
Yeah.
you're doing.
Oh yeah,
with
so
Jake.
Jake and I are working on a project. We've been working on it for a long time. We pitched it several different places. We've got a publisher before the pandemic, a good publisher, and then we were full speed ahead, and then of course everything stopped. And so for a while we were unsure if it was ever going to come out. And since it's not announced, I can't tell you what it's called. I can't tell you who the publisher is, but you could go to my website, and if you go to the store, we printed a convention teaser for it before we had a publisher. So that is there. But anyway, if you know Jake's art, you'll see it. So everybody went pencils down, which if you don't know, those watching means every comic project across most comic publishers was frozen because, and this is a little inside baseball too, and you guys know this, I'm sure, because the largest distributor of comic books stopped shipping comic books, and a few other things happened that caused all comics to stop being sold, which caused all publishers to kind of freak out and stop everything. Anyway, so for several months, we didn't know if this project was on hold or if it was dead or what. And then I think at the end of last year, they reached out and they said, hey, we want to do this as a graphic novel because it was going to be a miniseries. And we were like, all right, sounds good. We just had to wait a little bit. But now we're back in it. I've finished up all the scripts, and Jake is busy drawing it. It looks awesome. And you got a page of original art. I traded him for one as well, so I'm very happy about that. But that will be out. I think that's scheduled to be out in 2022 sometime. It'll be done way before then, so maybe I'll email you guys the PDF, and you can look at it whenever it's done. But that's that project, and then our other project, the other thing I'm working on, Unearth, that Baldemar is drawing, and Cullen and I are writing. The 10th issue just came out, and on May 5th, Volume 2 will be out. Hey, there it is. Did you open them all and connect the back covers?
I haven't. I saw the picture. I just haven't done it myself. But yeah, was that so? Sorry to get you off track, but Greg Smallwood designed the logo.
Yeah, so Greg did the logo.
Whose idea was it with the back cover then? Was that yours and Colin's or Baltimore or?
No, so when you do a book through Image, you provide Image with all of the content, the pages and everything, and other information, and the logo, of course. But Image has on staff a few graphic designers, and ours is Ryan Brewer, and he's awesome. And he's really invested in every project, and he took a look at everything, and he came up with that cool. I don't have it here. Where is it? Yeah, these cool connecting covers that when you put them all together spell Unearth. But Ryan did a lot of other great stuff. I mean, we're really happy with the design of the interior, all of the credits pages and back matter and everything. And that's all because of Ryan. And so we were very happy to be working with him. And Greg, of course, did a beautiful job designing the logo in the first place, because everything he does is beautiful. He's a very talented guy.
Absolutely. And props to the Christopher Harris backup story. That was awesome.
Yeah, so Matt Mitchell, who lives in Kansas City also, who's a writer. Matthew Mitchell and I wrote a story that was in Heavy Metal. It was $2.99. And Jake Smith actually drew it, the guy I'm doing the other book with. But yeah, so we had a couple of backup stories in issues like 7, 8, and 9, I think. But King Eddie and Marco DeFillo did one of them, and then Matt Mitchell and Christopher Harris did the other. So that was cool. What I really like about Image, especially, is we get 28 pages. Our story usually goes 20 or 22. And then we get complete control over what we put in the back. So it's always really cool to be able to say, hey, we have room for pinups, or people who I'm friendly with, I can say, hey, want to do a backup story? And sometimes that's their first published thing, which is awesome, because I remember when I did my first published thing, it was awesome. I was very happy. So it's nice. I dig it. And it's fun to put out a call for fan art and stuff, because I always used to be into that when I was a kid, or I remember all the drawings of Spawn and stuff and that people had done, or the Wizard magazine art contests.
Right.
So it's cool to be able to, do that as well, along with the pinups and the stories from peers. Fun stuff.
You seem to find a lot of talent around you. Not find, but you seem to attract a lot of people. We didn't know who Baltimore was until you kind of introduced him to us, and we didn't know who Jake was until you introduced him to us. Are you on the internet looking for people and making connections, or how do those connections come about?
Sometimes on the internet. So I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm on Instagram way more than I'm on Facebook or on Twitter. And a lot of the time I'll find cool people, and they might already be aware of me, or if they're not, if they happen to think my stuff's cool too, then we'll, maybe start up a conversation. Or it's weird how social media works, but just by interacting with each other's posts, you can start to slowly build up a conversation. But yeah, there are a couple of guys I'm talking to right now who I didn't know a year ago who are really cool. And conventions are the big ones, because you just walk around and immediately. Jake had drawn and self-published multiple trade paperbacks, and he's I don't know how old he was when I met him, but super young. And I was whoa, this guy never stops working. And Baltimore was actually a student of mine. You guys might have heard this story. I don't know. But I teach some classes at the Kansas City Art Institute, and do you remember the Spectrum show that Kansas City used to do?
Yep.
I was at one of those set up. My friend Sheena had given me a space because they had an extra space. And Valdemar came by and he had his sketchbook and he was like, I'm working on this comic. Can you give me some feedback? Oh, and you're going to be my teacher in 2 weeks or whatever. And I gave him all this feedback and he was like, awesome, I'll do that. And I'll see you at school. And then he had like done all that stuff. Like the first day of class, he'd like done everything. And I was like, whoa, this kid, he's on top of it. And he just gets better and better and better. It's pretty crazy to see how good he is. And now he's really talented dude and a super nice guy. But I like Baltimore a lot.
He's tied up. We might as well plug him if anybody's watching. He's got that pitch in at DC, right, for the Robbins thing?
Well, yeah, since you're saying it, I don't think he's allowed to. But
oh, well, it's been on Facebook and stuff. I mean, you can go and vote.
I know.
Okay.
See, Baltimore didn't tell you. He suggested and made a winky face. But now you're telling us, which is totally fine because you don't talk to DC. But okay. So here's what I understand. I understand that there's a set of March Madness brackets for different DC pitches, and I believe different creative teams are attached to those pitches because I see lots of people on Twitter talking about this. And yeah, if you find that on Twitter, you should vote for Robbins because who knows, Baltimore might be involved with Robbins. Wink.
Well, the thing is, nobody listens to us. They might be on today because you're here, but they don't listen to us. So it's just the four of us, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the details of that, but you should go vote for the Robbins on the DC March Madness bracket.
Robbins is the coolest of them, from what I can see.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it definitely is. But yeah, that's what's is that what I'm working on? I think that's what I'm working on. I'm pretty much done with Unearth. We have a little bit more work to do to get the trade paperback out, but it's on my desk. It's mostly just like okaying stuff.
So Unearth is over then? You're not going to go back to it like it's done?
Yeah. So we ended with issue 10. Back before the pandemic, we thought we had toyed with going to issue 15, but it was a really awkward start again with issue 6 because there had been no comics for months and months and months, and it was really hard to get the word out. And so we didn't pick up where we were readership-wise. And, you know, it's a business, so issue 10's where it is. But I feel like I got everything I wanted out of Unearth, and so I'm pretty happy with it. We got to do it. It's my first like official writing credit, and Baltimore got 10 really beautiful issues out of it, and I got to work with Cullen, and we've been talking about working together for a very long time. And I have a couple more books that I can offer to folks at conventions. I have volume 1 on my website now. You should go check it out. But yeah, volume 2 will be out May 5th, I believe.
Well, hopefully, if people, if people were digging it for the first 5 and then they got lost in the shuffle, they can hopefully, maybe the second trade will sell better. That way people are, want to pick it up or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so.
What was it like? How did it work with you and Cullen, like writing? Like, did you guys just kind of hammer out something together? Did one of you take the lead? Like, how'd that work? Co-writing. It always interests me.
What was the last part there?
It always interests me, like co-writing, like how it works. So I'm just curious the dynamic with you.
Well, on both of the projects that I'm writing right now, the one with Jake and Unearth, we it was important to me that the story like came out of the stuff that the artist was interested in drawing. So we had some brainstorm sessions where we asked Baldemar to come up with a list of things he was into, the kinds of stories he wanted to tell. And then we had to go over them because Cullen writes so many books that inevitably there will be some sort of connection between a concept and a thing he's done. So we wanted to, you know, weed out the redundant ideas. And infamously, Baldemar wanted to do a killer doll story. And Cullen was like, I've already done a killer doll story. The only way I will do another one is if it is the very best killer doll story ever told. And so we didn't come up with that. So that was out the window. But anyway, we got on the phone and we came up with this weird idea for the caves. I don't want to give away the end of Unearth in case somebody's going to buy it. But basically, the big reveal that happens at the end of the first volume is the idea we came up with, and then we reverse engineered that. But for Cullen and I writing, we came up with basically a list of what we wanted to happen, where we wanted the characters to go, and where we wanted them to be by the end of it. And then for each issue together, we broke it down into what happens on each of the 20, however many pages. I think our earlier issues were like 28 pages, and later we were like, no, 20. It's only 20. But then we would divide up the scenes, and I'd take about half, and Cullen would take about half, and then we'd write them, and then we'd put them together, and then it would take a little bit of massaging because, you know, they wouldn't always work seamlessly, or there'd be something really good that he'd done that I wanted to tie into mine, or vice versa. And that's pretty much how we did it all the way through. I think the last 2 or 3 or 4 issues, there might be one issue where Cullen wrote most of it, and one of those I wrote most of it, but I don't really remember. But we would, once Baldemar then drew everything, we would get on the phone and we'd go through with the script and Baldemar's art, and we would really cut out a lot of stuff, because once the art is there, you get a really good understanding of what comes through really clearly just from the art, or what we misjudged would be clear, and so we might have to add a little bit. But mostly it was taking stuff away. And then we sent it off to Crank, who letters all our stuff. And when we got it back, we'd do one more pass. And that's the process. In volume 2, it was a little weird because with every issue, it became clear we were going to have less time to tell the rest of the story. And so by issue 8, we kind of had to scrap where we were and condense some stuff and figure out what we'd be okay with leaving out and what we needed to get in. And then issue 10 was a crazy issue, but yeah, it worked the same way. And that's how we did it.
Wow. When you're writing that, do you kind of have a backup plan in case you end up doing 10 issues instead of 15? Do you kind of, in your mind, have you kind of come up with contingencies and stuff?
Well, with this one, it was a little weird too, because really the first 5 issues, we were like, this is a really good story. If it can go further, we'll go further. And so we had a lot of ideas of what we wanted to explore in volumes 2 and 3. We knew what had to be told, though, by the end. I guess that, in line with your question, yeah, we knew which beats absolutely had to be included for us to feel good about leaving it. And then some of it we just had to let go. I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, a thing that I like about comics that I'm more aware of now as I write them than just drawing them, is you can have in my head, when I come up with a story, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have a 3-issue story about that aspect of this world? When really, if you put that aspect, whatever that thing is, if you put it in the book for 2 pages, people are going to remember it just as well. You don't have to have 3 issues of a concept for it to work really well. So that was helpful to know by the time we did volume 2 and had to cut some things out, and really helpful when I was writing the thing for Jake, because a lot of crazy stuff happens in that book, but we don't have to dwell on too much of it for too long for it to still feel like it's, you know, happening.
Back to the Jake thing, since you mentioned it, what you said, it was originally a mini-series, now it's going to be a graphic novel. How many pages? You said it was originally going to be a mini-series?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How many pages, issues? Like, what are we looking at story-wise?
Well,
for that?
it was going to be a 4-issue story, and we were pushing it as far as we possibly could. So it was going to be 28 pages an issue, I think, which comes out to like, what, 115? Well, I don't know what that comes out to. It's a simple equation I'm not thinking about. But we have about 115 in the trade paperback graphic novel. We have about 115 pages.
Okay.
And that was interesting because when it was issues, it was limited to X amount of pages per issue. But then as I was writing the end, I was like, I'm going to steal some pages from that issue that only went 24 pages and put them at the end. So then the 4th issue ended up being like 32 pages. But it's not a 4th issue. It's the last quarter of a graphic novel. So it doesn't matter. I think it's interesting that when you do single issues, you can really get away with like jumping forward in time, you know, like there's a cliffhanger and then you jump in the next issue at the beginning, you've jumped forward however long you want. And there's no weirdness there. I will be interested to see how that works in a graphic novel, because that's how it is. Like our first couple of cliffhangers are like time jumps. I don't really think anybody's going to think twice about it, but it's one aspect that is different between the 2 formats. Because when you're reading a collected thing, you already understand it's collected. But if it's a graphic novel, you don't really think about that. Maybe it doesn't matter at all.
What are some of your things that you like about writing versus drawing, and vice versa?
Well, the time difference. I like that writing is very much faster. I like that another person with good storytelling skills acts as a filter for what I've written and can say, there's a better way to do this, and here it is. I think that's interesting and really cool when you get the pages back and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. There's a magic that you experience when you give someone a written script and you receive the visual story back. That's really cool. And that doesn't necessarily happen when you are the artist. It happens for me on Twig because Jean's pages are beautiful when I get them back colored. I send them the ink and I'm like, what? This is amazing when I get it back. And the other thing, so far I'm just listing why I like writing better, which I don't necessarily like writing better, but these are some of the positive differences. It's really cool that I just handed off the scripts and now the weight is off my shoulders for my contribution to that project. I mean, I'm still, Jake and I have a good relationship, and all of the people I've collaborated with as a writer, I've had a good relationship with the artist, and we talk about things, and there are no problems with me giving suggestions, or I mean, I'm also an artist, so I don't give too many suggestions that are obnoxious. I'm just
Redraw this car.
yeah.
I want 12 horses in this panel.
There's those big oversized artist edition books. There's one for the Dark Knight Returns, and you guys, yeah.
I don't have that one.
You don't have that one?
No, I don't have
I'm surprised.
I wish I did. I don't.
Well, it has. Who inked that? It was Klaus Johnson, right? So there are pages that Klaus Janson inked, and then there are these like I don't remember what the paper quality is, but there are these translucent pages that fold over it, where you can see where Frank Miller was not happy with the inks and re-inked portions of it. But what I found fascinating was it was almost exclusively, anytime he did that, it was almost exclusively the character acting, like the way the expression looked. Like he made it a little more subtle or a little more expressive. And that's because that makes the story better. And so that's how I try to be if I give notes as a writer to an artist, only to make the story better, not because I imagined that differently, you should do it this way. No, but like, oh, maybe this character needs a little more room here, or maybe it would be more clear exactly what's happening. And also, I'm like, it could be more clear, but it's clear enough, so I'm not even going to mention that, because that's how I like to receive feedback, Yeah, so it's really nice to have the weight off your shoulders. Here are the scripts, and now the project is being worked on, and I'll check in and get lettering drafts and everything. But so that's nice. But on the other hand, I still like doing art. Right now, my collaboration with Scotty is great because he has a really good understanding of what I tend to expand on, or the kinds of things that I'm interested in drawing. So sometimes he'll be like, 6 panels, it's 2 pages, it's 6 panels, and they're walking through a bunch of crazy places. And I'm like, awesome. Because we've had so many conversations about the tone and the world, and we're already kind of on the same page. So it's really fun to just be like, well, here are all these ideas. And sometimes if I get stuck, I'll just be like, what do you think? This or that? And he'll always have some really good feedback. And yeah, I like that. I got into this because I like drawing crazy stuff. And this particular book is full of fun, crazy stuff. So it's exactly what I want to be doing. I'm never bored by it. It's the opposite of boring. But like I said, it takes a long time. So that's the downside of doing the art. I know I listed like 6 things that are good about writing and like 2 that are good about drawing. But also I can be like, look at this thing I drew, bam, and that feels like it's way more me, I guess, than when I've written something. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, that's good. So for a while you were doing quite a few covers. Have you kind of backed off of that since you're trying to draw a book?
Yeah, so I was doing a bunch of covers for 3 or 4 different companies. I spent like a year or a year and a half, maybe 2 years, just doing tons and tons of covers. And while I was doing that, I was seeking out artists to work with and coming up with pitch ideas. And so for the projects that are coming out, there are maybe 2 or 3 others that are not happening or might be happening later. But yeah, I felt good about that because I was getting work out there, And a lot of those covers I liked. Some of them I didn't like as much. It was very interesting to work with so many different license holders, because a lot of those, especially for Dynamite, a lot of those covers were of like licensed properties. And so I have some funny stories that I'm not going to tell here, that I'll tell you later.
Can't wait.
At Air
Yeah,
Cap.
and then,
Hopefully.
Hopefully at Air Capital Comic Con.
yeah, maybe. So, you know, I don't really recall exactly how that fizzled out, but I think when I started working on Unearth, because we got it approved, it got picked up, so suddenly I had a thing to work on. I don't know, I just quit chasing after those covers. The thing about doing freelance like that was exhausting is that at the beginning of every month, I would have to email every editor I knew at every one of those companies and be like, here's what I have. Do you have anything coming out? And I kind of got used to knowing when they would assign their cover assignments. And I was doing 2 or 3 a month, I think, sometimes 4, which was fine. But, and now at this point, a lot of those editors have moved on. So that little pocket, I would have to rebuild it up if I wanted to do that. But it was cool. I liked doing that. In fact, today and yesterday, I'm getting ready to print an album that has a lot of those cover, like the inks and maybe some of the color from those covers in it. So more, I'm sure I'll be yelling about that on Facebook whenever I get ready to print it.
I can put together another con book or like a convention book or a sketch book or something.
Well, that's what I'm doing this instead. I'm doing the cover album instead of that Untold is what it's called, the sketchbook that I've done. I've done 4 of those. But today I was looking, and I might do a collection of those. I might just put all the previous ones I've done together. But who knows? Only time will tell what happens there.
I think I only have 1 of those. I don't think I have all of them.
Yeah.
Man, it sounds like I should print a collection.
Yeah, right?
That's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like to me too.
Do you have you ever written your own stuff and drawn your own stuff, or have you only drawn other people's stuff and written for other people?
Well, I have written and drawn my own stuff like 15 years ago, and I would make little mini comics. And I have written a few things that I intend to draw. The problem is it's really hard. I have not had the opportunity yet to be paid for writing and drawing my own thing. And I have had a few times where I could, if I had been able to pull it together, I could have drawn a thing that I'd written and had it published. But that was in the middle of me doing all those covers too. I will at some point. It's a goal of mine, absolutely, to write and draw my own thing. But in the last couple of years, I've had other things going on. So someday soon. Maybe not. Soon.
Well, it is understandable. Let's see. What you teach, you write for other people to draw. You drew art for other writers. I don't know where you have all this time.
Yeah. Yeah. I at one point last year, I was writing 2 books and drawing the book with Scotty, and that was too much. I think ideally for me, drawing a book and maybe writing one throughout the year would work. But I don't think I should write 2 and draw 1, at least not right now. You know, maybe once I get faster at it.
Well, you're doing so obviously the obvious answer would be, working digitally, it lets you work faster. And you are doing this book, the new one digitally. You're drawing it digitally, correct?
I am. Well, mostly, yeah. Like here, I'm working on these thumbnails. Like, so I'll draw just my thumbnails like this and do some detail drawings, more detailed drawings. And then I'll either take photos of these or scan them and then put them on my iPad. And then I will flesh it out digitally on the iPad. And then I'll send it to Jean, who colors it all digitally. And that's how it's done. I have done stuff on paper in the past. I think as soon as I was able to go digital, I would always reach a point in my inked pages where I would become frustrated and just be like, well, I've got this as far as it's going. And then I'd scan it and then I'd finish it digitally. And sometimes, now I do almost everything digitally. There are some things I can't figure out how to do. So sometimes I'll be like, well, I could do this in 2 seconds with a certain brush or pen. And so I'll just do it. And then I'll scan that in and just put it into the thing. And then the more I do that, the more I have a library of that stuff already anyway. So it is digital, but sometimes it's accentuated with a little bit of stuff that was on paper.
Right. When you would ink on paper, did you mainly use a brush, pen, just anything that works, whatever tool felt right, or like?
So for the first, I used to, a long time ago, I'd use microns mostly, and like those marker brush pens. And then for a long time, when I drew my very first comic, We Will Bury You for IDW, I did that almost entirely with a crow quill and a number 2 nib. And then I would throw those into Photoshop, and I use a Wacom tablet, like a little blue tablet. It's not a screen, you just draw on the tablet. And I'd fix it up. And then at one point I was on a Cintiq Companion, I think it was called. And I had 3 of those, and I killed every one of them because I would spend way too long on it, and it would like start to burn my arm. And then inevitably it would fall apart, and I'd be like, can you fix this? And they would send me another one. And then with the third one, I was like, you know what, I'm done with that. And now I use an iPad. I use iPad. Procreate is the program I use in the iPad. And so for a long time, I used a program called Sketchbook on my Cintiq. And I miss a couple of functions from that on the iPad. There are a couple of brushes I really like. But I love the iPad. It's really great.
Well, the crow quill, the nibs, those are supposed to be disposable. Like eventually you throw them away. I didn't realize you did that with Cintiqs too.
You get a longer life out of them.
Out of the Cintiq?
Man, the Cintiq was kind of frustrating for me because it was a Windows machine, and anytime Windows would update, it would cause for 3 days you'd have a bunch of errors and weird things happening because Windows wanted you to use Windows tablet, and Apple wanted you to use Apple's tablet, and so Cintiq was always behind the curve on these updates. And it was a problem. If you had to turn in a thing in 2 days and you lost one of those days, then that's a big problem. But man, Procreate is great. It all just saves. I've never lost anything because it automatically saves everything. You can make those cool animations. I don't know. I love it. The options on the brushes are so cool. Like you can lower the opacity so it looks like it's, I don't know, a big part of drawing digitally is making it look like it's not digital. And it's very easy to do with that.
I was going to say, with the Cintiq, do you remember, I've been listening to a lot of the old Wizard magazines on, what's the show?
Cartoonist
Kayfabe. And they talk about Will Portacio when he did Wetworks, and they came out with that ad when it finally came out 2 years late, and it was like, whatever, 20, 20 pencils, 150 nibs, 20,000 bullets, you know, like 2 gallons of ink. Do you remember that ad?
No.
You know what
I'm
I'm
gonna look
talking
it up.
about?
No.
Really?
I'm
Okay,
gonna look
never
it
mind.
up though. I mean, I know everything else I understand everything else except for that ad.
Well, that's a good segue because I wanted to ask another question. I always like to go way back. Like, what kind of comics did you read growing up, and which ones kind of had a big impact on you that made you want to become a comic book artist?
So the very first comics I had did not have let me go back. I'll go back even further. So the very first comics I read had a huge impact on me. And my grandpa had like a tin trash can full of like Mad magazines from the late 70s, early 80s. I remember he had the one with from Superman 2 where Alfred E. Newman's chasing after him with his dry cleaning. And they had the horror magazine with the big pizza on the cover that Alfred E. Newman's holding that has like fingers and stuff in it. And I remember there was a horror parody in that called Arbor Day about some chainsaw guy. I think it was probably
I remember that. Arbor Day.
Anyway, I would look at those things constantly. There were a bunch of others that he had in there. And I think that's probably my first exposure to comic books. And I couldn't read then. So I would just look at the pictures. And I don't know, I would glean some story from that. I don't think I'd make up my own story, but it's a visual medium, so I'd be able to kind of tell what was going on. Later, I think the first real comics I had was like a Superman Walmart 3-pack, which did not have a big impact on me. But then later, I started to get into it when I would go with my mom to this place called Green Hills, and there was a spinner rack there, and I would get the Marvel Comics Presents. I think the first one I ever had was 93, and they were the Sam Keith covers of Wolverine, and it was a particular story where Wolverine flashes back to when he's in Canada and before he has the claws, and he's like fighting worms in nature and stuff. So I was really into that. Got into Spider-Man. I was really into Maximum Carnage and Venom, like the Venom miniseries, the first one. I was like, this is amazing. And like I mail ordered the Trial of Venom. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So I was into that a lot. And then trying to figure out what order this all happened in. I was into Spawn. I was really into Spawn when it came out. That was, at one point, that was my thing. Like anything Spawn, I had it. I drove all over. I had my mom drive me to Kansas City one weekend to like get every issue that I needed. And then like 93 or 94, I went and met Todd McFarlane. Anyway, really, really into it. I don't know what happened, but around issue 70 or 65, around when the movie came out and the cover started to look like Dave McKean, and he'd lost the rights to Chapel, so he replaced him with Priest. And it started to cross over with Curse of the Spawn, and it was confusing. All of those things contributed to me not like losing interest. I don't know why. Maybe I got a Nintendo 64. Who knows?
GoldenEye.
Yeah.
PlayStation.
And then later in high school, who knows how long I took off? Probably only a year. Then I got really into Batman because I had been into that when Nightfall was coming out. But I decided to like finish all of that stuff and complete all of those. There was a series of Batman crossovers where you could actually collect them all, you know what I mean? Before it became too big. And so I was into that for a while. And man, then I read Preacher, and I was really into The Long Halloween, the Tim Sale, because that art was so crazy. And then I got out of it again when I went to college. But then there was a comic shop right by my school. It was Clint's, on Main Street. Yeah. And I think I may be going into way too much detail here.
No, this is great.
Okay, so when I was in college, I didn't buy any for a while, but then I started to see in the window like posters for Dark Victory, the sequel to The Long Halloween. And I was like, what? And so that got me back in. And so I started buying those. And at some point, I don't know why, I kind of lost interest in Big Two, and was way more into like weird things. Like I got into Richard Corbin and like just old weird comics. And
How about Richard Corbin? Were you aware that he was fairly local?
I had no idea. In fact, I met Richard Corbin, and I didn't know it. I went to one of those small cons that used to be over in the convention center in Kansas. You know what I'm talking about? And I was set up there, and I was next to Richard Corbin. And he had a piece of cardboard that was folded in half that said Richard Corbin. And I was like, who is this guy? And because he was hardly there, but he came in every once in a while. And then like a year or two later, I put it all together and was like, what? I was next to Richard Corbin, and I didn't even talk to him.
I think there were some small ones we used to go to in Kansas City where like Mike Mignola was there one year and Barry Windsor Smith. It was like in a hotel lobby. I think it was before Planet.
Yeah, and nobody was talking to those guys. They were just sitting there like
We
tried to talk to Barry Windsor Smith, but he was talking about Cockney accents for 20 minutes.
We waited in line with Barry Windsor Smith, and then when we got up there, the con person came up and said, "Oh, it's time for lunch," and he's like, "Oh," and we're like, "But," and he looked at our book and he put like a check mark on it. It was like, boom. He's like, "All right, see you later." I'm like, "Okay, I guess." I mean,
it's all good.
You roll your dice, you take your chances. I mean, I understand it, but you know, it was a little. It wasn't the greatest experience ever, but.
Well, we probably.
Hey, I met Barry Windsor Smith.
I did. I met Barry Windsor Smith. I mean, it's cool.
That's all
it's
that matters.
fine.
We probably rubbed elbows at that event because I was there, and I was like, "Oh, that's that Hellboy guy." Same thing as before. Like I was too ignorant to know that I had a great opportunity. I did enter a contest, a comic art drawing contest at that thing, and Mike Mignola was one of the judges. I put all this together later. We had to draw like a Batman cover or something, and I did one, and I got second. I think I won like a X-Men like cartoon VHS. But what I really want to know, I remember exactly what the image looks like of the guy who got first, but I want to know who it is because I probably know him. You know, like the people. I probably know multiple people who were there now, but I didn't at the time. But yeah, I remember the drawing. It was a good drawing. It was a good Batman.
Well, it's funny, back then, I would just go with the name people, like Mike Mignola, Barry Windsor Smith, who I knew. I never even would go to, like, the smaller guys or whatever, the artist alley.
Yeah. No, I know.
Years before you start kind of branching out and finding all those kind of hidden gems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's so much good stuff. And now anybody can print their own book, so you come away with, like, a giant pile of books.
It's almost too much when you go to a big convention like Planet or like C2E2 or whatever. I mean, I just get overwhelmed. It's like you walk up and down Artist Alley because there's so many people. And it's like, and I get overwhelmed and frustrated because it's like, oh, that's cool. And then it's like, oh my God, like, it's too much, like overload, And so then I go back and hang out at your table for like an hour or Buster's table for an hour or whatever, just to like decompress. But, yeah, I have a kick me. Like I was at C2E2 the year when nobody knew who Daniel Warren Johnson was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He did that. Was it Green Leader or Road Green or Green Road?
Yeah, I think it's Green Leader.
Green Leader. I think that was at C2E2. And I think I was there, and I think I talked to Buster, and Buster's like, dude, you need to go check out this Daniel Warren Johnson dude. He's like giving away a comic or whatever, And I went over there, and I was like, oh, this stuff's pretty cool because I think he had he done like Space Mullet or anything at that point?
He would have done Space Mullet, and then he did like a Ghost Trucker
with Donnie Cates. Yeah. And I went over to his table, and I think I got the comic, and I think he gave me like a sticker or a postcard or something, and I was looking at the stuff, and the stuff was affordable at that point if you wanted to get a sketch or like a page of art or something, And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, got a comic, and and then it's like, like 2 years later, 3 years later, it's like you can't even get to his table. It's like, whatever. commissions are like insane, and I'm just like, oh, it's like I was so stupid. It's like, and people told me.
I met him at that Cincy Comic-Con, the show that Tony Moore used to do, and that was when he was working on Space Mullet, and everybody was like, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this guy's stuff? Have you seen this Space Mullet stuff?" Yeah, but he's a super nice guy. Daniel Warren Johnson has rocketed to stardom and remains one of the sweetest people you will ever talk to. He's a very nice guy.
Well, I just got the Beta Ray Bill issue 1. I haven't read it yet, but I got it, so I'm looking forward to that. But
yeah, I'm sure it's great. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out. Ultra Mega, did you guys get that?
I have it right here.
I haven't read it yet either, but yeah, I have it.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, that was very cool. And then Chris Somney has a new book, the Jana and the Impossible Monster from Oni. That was really nice. I want to get that James Stokoe book. I haven't seen it anywhere yet.
I've got the first issue. I haven't read it yet, but I have the first issue.
I'm waiting for the trade.
So, yeah. I almost wish... Huh?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I almost wish that I would have waited on the Beta Ray build to get the nice... Because I'm sure they're going to do like a nice oversized hardcover or whatever.
They want you to get both.
Well, I probably will. I'll probably double dip.
And Don will do it.
Yeah, if it's good enough, yeah, which it will be. But
yeah, I think now my interest is mostly in stuff with really idiosyncratic, really creative people like those guys who have control over what they're doing and doing exactly what they love. Because anytime I get it, you can just feel that they love that stuff, you know. Yeah, and
absolutely.
And I love reading that stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I read now. Because the further we go, the more these guys that you really look up to are passing away, you know, like Corbin recently. So.
Do you have a lot of time to? I mean, you probably don't. Do you make time, or do you still read a bit, or what do you read?
I don't read comics nearly as much as I used to. I will buy, mostly what I buy is print comics anyway. Mostly what I buy is stuff where I want to support the people making it, because it matters so much, you know, to pre-order. And then I'll sit down and read like a few things every once in a while. But I don't read nearly as much as I used to. And there's so much, you know, and there's so many shows to watch. There's so much entertainment that
exactly. Yeah, and
we're good at all.
You're doing that weekly podcast or video cast or whatever with
Yeah, so Dennis Hopeless and I, we started by recording it, and then Dennis would spend hours editing it. And so we figured it was easier just to stream. Where we talk about, well, before we talked about lots of stuff. And then we started talking about the Marvel shows. And now I think we're just going to be talking about whatever is relevant. Like they just came out with a trailer for Ghostbusters. Did you see it?
I have not. I saw the Jupiter's Legacy trailer, though.
Mm-mm.
I didn't see Jupiter's Legacy yet, but my mom actually sent me the Ghostbusters trailer today, which I would not expect.
A new Ghostbusters movie?
Yeah, it was supposed to come out last summer, but the pandemic.
Yeah,
okay,
Ghostbusters Afterlife. It was supposed to come out last summer, and there was a trailer for last summer.
Right. I've seen the
one
old
they released today was more of a clip, and it's very funny. You should check it out. I think you'll like it. But I won't say any more. I don't want to ruin it for you.
You see the Loki trailer they dropped this week, I think?
No, I didn't see that either.
Yeah, that looks like it could be pretty good.
Is that for a TV show?
Yeah, Disney Plus TV show.
Yeah, it looks pretty fun. The Picard trailer is the one that excites me the most.
Oh, really? With Q?
Because I love Star Trek Next Generation.
Star Trek people.
I do. I watch Discovery.
Okay.
Me and Drew aren't Star Trek people, but
man,
I don't know, man. It was all about Star Wars.
I watched Star Trek, especially the first you know, whatever you want to call it, the early ones, you know, back there, because my dad was a big Star Trek fan. So that was actually kind of what pulled me probably into sci-fi in the first place a little bit. And then, of course, Star Wars came out, and that just blew everything away. But I still have a sweet spot, you know, there, whatever, for Star Trek. I try to watch bits and pieces of it when I can.
Yeah, I love the Next Generation, and then the further along we go, the less I'm able to get it all, see it all. But
Yeah,
I intend to. But you know how it is.
I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and I guess you don't have to answer it. Do you have plans to do Planet?
I haven't decided yet. What I told them was, I love the show. I just haven't decided what I'm going to be doing for conventions this year. And I think I told you guys that too, for your show. But your show and Planet are the two big ones that I have on my list. So,
yeah, I know it's. I miss shows. I'm sure. I know you guys do. I mean, I love going to shows and meeting and hanging out and, you know, talking and stuff like that. But I understand it, man. We just gotta, you know, the longer we hold it off, you know, the better we're gonna be later on. Just we need to get our world in order before we can have fun. But man, I really miss it.
yeah, I didn't miss it for a while. I was like, this is kind of awesome that I don't have to go anywhere. But especially the last like 2 months, I'm really kind of getting antsy. I really miss like the car ride, like piling in with like three people, like Baltimore and Buster, or any number of Kansas City people, and then driving to a show. Like just the drive is just as much fun as the show, you know. And we just haven't done that. And then I really like. I mean, shows are fun. It's fun to meet a lot of new people, but it's also fun to like hang out after, you know, and to just hang out with all the people, because you don't really see everybody when you're at the show, because you're sitting in your spot. But when everybody's hanging out together, it's a lot of fun. I miss it. I think I'm definitely going back in 2022, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens for the rest of the year.
And I mean, that's totally, I mean, that's where everybody's pretty much at, I think. And it's 100% understandable. It's just, you know, I wish the world was right, because it's fun, you know?
How has Kansas City become such a great spot for comic book artists? I mean, it seems like, I mean, you guys were great before, and now like Scotty Young has moved there and Chris Burnham. It just seems like it's just growing as far as a comic book community.
Well, I don't feel like it's growing. I feel like it has constantly like moving players coming in and out, because 10 years ago we had like Matt Fraction and Tony Moore and Nathan Fox and just as many great creators. I think some people move here because of the community, and so it's a self-perpetuating sort of thing. Like Jake came in because we all knew Jake, and we tried to get Jake to move here. And I think Scotty came because like Jason was, and some of us were trying to get Scotty to come here. And Burnham might be the same way, but everybody is pretty cool with each other. And at least before the pandemic, we always made an effort to like do some events, you know, to like get people together. And that's been going on for 20 years since I lived here. I've talked to some people who live in bigger cities with a lot of comic book creators, and they never do anything together. And I always thought that was weird. But it's also a testament to the character of some of the guys who live here, like who are very successful, like Jason, for example. But he's the coolest guy, you know. Like Jason is just like, hey, let's hang out. There's no air of, you know, arrogance or anything. He's just like, hey, let's hang out. So I think if the personalities weren't like cool people, I don't think it would work out this way.
Well, you said you wanted to kind of get off around 10. We're about 10:03, so we probably
All right.
we could talk to you all night, but we don't.
Well,
We know
here,
you
do you have any parting questions before I log off here? No?
So, was your first professional work? Was it on Haunt?
No, he said it was.
No. Well, it depends what you want to call professional, I guess. I used to hunt. No, that's a horrible word choice based on what you just said. I used to hang out on these like digital webbing message boards, and there would be like a work board where people are like, hey, I need somebody to draw this comic. This is what I'm offering to pay. And there would be another board where everybody would be like, here's my portfolio. Please pay me to do something. And I would send out dozens and dozens of emails from those message boards with like, here's my portfolio. And I think I was hired to do a couple of covers for a series called Family Bones, a horror comic. So those were my very first paid covers. I think I got paid like $80 a cover, which is not a good rate, but I was happy to do it. And then I was hired by a gentleman named Sam Costello to do a horror story for his website called Split Lip, where he would put up a bunch of different horror stories he wrote, and he would hire people. And I don't remember when I got paid for that, but it was fine. It was a good experience, and it was fair. And it was a story called Heading South about cowboys or something. And then I'd been talking to Phil Hester at Planet, who was always in Negative Burn, the comic. And so I asked Sam if we could pitch to that, since he owned it, because he paid me to do it freelance. And yeah, he was cool with it, and we got picked up. So I think Negative Burn Volume 2, Issue 13, I think, is the first interior art I did, and it was that story. And it has a really awesome Brian Boland cover. It's like one of those strips of the like weird little man who's Brian Boland, and it's awesome. So I was really happy with the cover. So that was my first thing that I had published. The first job that allowed me to quit my day job was a zombie comic called We Will Bury You from IDW. And don't go look that up. I've reached the point, I understand where you're like, yeah, don't bother looking that up. You know what? I take it back. It's well written. I should say it's well written, and I did an okay job, but I didn't do a great job. So if you want to look up and see me not do a great job, then you should. But Bria and Zane did a good job writing. So that was my first published work. And then I did Haunt and like Hack Slash and then Spread and then a bunch of random stuff in between. Well, guys, thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks so much for coming. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was cool to talk finally for a while.
Talk to you guys. It's been a long time. I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned. Before I did those covers, I did a web comic called Clockwork Creature, where I would be like, I'm going to spend an hour on a page each week and put it up there, put it online. And some of the pages I spent an hour on, some of them I spent way more. But anybody listening to this, you can go to my Patreon, which is Patreon.com/Kyle Strahm. And if you join at the $5 level, you get access to a bunch of stuff, but you get a free download of that 50-page webcomic I did. Plus the comic I just mentioned from Negative Burn, Heading South. You can download that and a bunch of other downloads. But anyway, that's my current plug.
Thanks. Very cool.
Heck yeah.
Well, we can't wait for Twig and then whatever you and Jake
Thanks,
are
guys.
cooking up.
Yeah, for sure.
Me either. But yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was cool talking.
I'll
All
talk
right.
to you guys later.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.